Today's readings are really all rather powerful. That beautiful image from Jeremiah of the potter shaping the clay and the pot being spoilt, and yet the potter being able to make something new and beautiful out of it. Point not just to the nation of Israel, but to my life and yours as we seek to follow Jesus Christ. That heart-rending letter from St. Paul to his dear friend Philemon, asking for the release of his slave Onesimus, asking him to treat this man not just as a slave, but as a brother, asking him to correct those things in his life. And then the tough one, the gospel. You cannot be my disciple if you do not. And it all seems rather tough. So I thought to myself, where does that take me? Well, you won't be surprised to know, on this Sunday of all Sundays, it takes me somewhere between Newcastle and South Shields. Or even the Paris Olympics, but we'll come back to those in a moment. Next Sunday is a big event for our region. The gun will fire, and what the rest of the nation knows as the Great North Run, or what more locally is far well known as the Run, will begin. It is a public running event with the widest field in the UK, with up to 50,000 runners, who start in Newcastle and end medal-bearing and tired at South Shields. And this year, 2 of the many will be Andrew and I. What does a runner need to do to succeed in a race? Well, the right equipment helps. You can't run in Dr. Martens. You need trainers. You need to train. You need to be prepared. You need a purpose and a vision, a commitment, whether that's simply crossing the line or raising money for charity or running in memory of a loved one. Or maybe it's just for that bit when you start running up through the housing estate in South Shields and all the children are giving you jelly babies and biscuits. It's just an amazing, amazing event, the Great North Run, but all runs must have a purpose. There must be a reason why we do them. And so, as I do prepare to run the Great North Run next week and look to today's readings, I was taken to probably the best film ever made, and one of my favourite films, and indeed one of my great heroes of the faith. So I am taken to the Paris Olympics, to Broadstairs Beach, and to Chariots of Fire. Olympic gold medalist, missionary, minister, and central character of the film is Eric Liddell. Eric Liddell, the Flying Scotsman himself. When he was talking of running, Eric Liddell famously said, "I believe God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure." And the film takes us through Eric's journey, as well as the journey of Harold Abrahams. Eric goes from local sprinter to Olympic hero. But it's worth knowing a lot more about Eric Liddell than just his running. For he was one that could connect constantly what it meant to be a Christian disciple to follow Jesus. And he used constantly the image of running. When he had finished and he proudly had his medal, he said these words: "It has been a wonderful experience to compete in the Olympic Games, to bring home a gold medal. But since I have been a young lad, I have had my eyes on a different prize. You see, each one of us is in a greater race than any I have run in Paris. My race ends only when God gives out the medals." Our readings today point to a very different finish line than that of the Paris Olympic Games or even South Shields. The tough gospel reading this morning is in fact all about reaching the ultimate finish line and how we do it. Running the race for Jesus. And so while when we read the words, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. Whilst that sounds a bit harsh, hate is used figuratively in this reading. And what it boils down to is this: Jesus comes first. God comes first. He is top of the list. He is the ultimate aim. The runner aims for the finish line. She or he knows the route, and so does the disciple. And the route is this. It's in Deuteronomy chapter 6. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. That is the route. That's the secret to the race. We also hear from Jesus, whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. And that might sound a bit harsh. And it took me back as I was reading, what does it mean to carry a cross? When I first did the Great Run, I was overtaken by the man who used to run with a refrigerator on his back. And you know when you're not going very fast, when a man with a fridge on his back runs past you. He became very famous and somewhat disabled, sadly, by his running with a fridge on his back. But it was a real burden, and he was trying to prove a point. Is running the race of a Christian disciple tough? Yes, it is. We are expected to carry our cross. We who follow Jesus cannot expect not to suffer, for Jesus suffered. Again, Eric Liddell compares this beautifully to the runner, saying, no one who really is human ever cared for an easy task. There is no enjoyment in a game that is easily won. It is that in which you have to strain every muscle and sinew to achieve victory, and only that will provide you with real joy. Jesus also says, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. That's a bit harsh. Everything? Everything? Even the coffee machine? But that's not what Jesus means. What Jesus is saying is that if we live our life guided by our wills, our wants and our passions, and not by him, we will be lost. We will go the wrong way. To truly follow Jesus means to give up the other influences in our lives. Or in the words of the Flying Scotsman, the great Eric Liddell, every Christian should live a God-guided life. For if you are not guided by God, you are guided by someone or something else. So what is this Christian life about? This race that we run together? We explored in Message Church yesterday what it was to run the race for Jesus. What is it all about? Well, here, in this place, running the race, I believe, means to build something new and exciting here in this place. It's getting on for 10 years ago that I was installed as vicar here, and I'm reminded every time I stand in this pulpit of the words of the then Bishop of Jarrow, Bishop Mark, when he stood here on that occasion and said, your job is to make this a more Christ-like place, to work with your vicar, to make Silksworth, and now Doxford, a more Christ-like place. That is what this life is about for us together. That is our finish line. But as we move on in our own lives, we're reminded this isn't the place where the medals are given out, but we should still be seeking the prize, seeking Jesus. Jesus is clear about the cost, and he gives us 2 parables to try and help the listener understand. He says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? And then suppose a king goes to war against another king. Won't you consider whether his 10,000 men can beat the 20,000? If we go back to the very first line of today's gospel reading, it actually starts with, large crowds were travelling with Jesus. Large crowds. I wonder how big the crowds were after Jesus started telling them what it cost to be a disciple, what it truly meant to follow Christ. There will be large crowds next Sunday morning, gathering in Newcastle and making their way to South Shields. But the truth always has been about the GNR that it's a run, it's not a race. We do not need to outdo each other, and it's about running together. It's a community event. Well, the same is true with the Christian life, with my walk and with your walk. For we're all walking the same route with Jesus. Some of us might wear funny clothes on a Sunday. Wear our shirts back to front with these things on. But the reality is we're all walking the same journey. We're just doing it in the way God has called us personally to do. The medals that are given out on Sunday will be the ones given out for all who have done the journey, whether they've sprinted it, I hope nobody's sprinting it, whether they're one of the elite runners, whether they're dressed as a pelican, carrying a fridge on their back, or bringing up the rear with a time of 4.5 hours. It really matters not. They'll all get a medal because they've all done the journey together and they are all winners. Some final words from Eric Liddell. He says, in the dust of defeat as well as in the laurels of victory, there is glory to be found as long as one has done their best. So let us run the race. Run the race that Jesus has set before us. And let's do so knowing these words. I leave you from Isaiah chapter 40. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk